beloved viewer, Sky Guardian, he has sent us a book that has been blessed from his guru, Swami Tadatmanandaji, written by him as well, Roar of the Ganges. It's a story that takes place in India, where Swamiji, then known as Mark, has been by the bank of the Ganges River, a very spiritual river that goes throughout much of India. He is in an ashram in the city of Rishikesh, in the foothills of the Himalayas. There, Mark is undergoing many drastic realizations about their own personality and how they are going to mesh in as a Westerner who is about to take sannyas, which is a renunciation. They are letting go of their name, their family, even their belongings to become a monk dedicated to the spiritual path. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What's going through his mind here? Let's explore his words together. Here we're starting a new chapter. We won't read the whole thing, but we'll just read a good few pages. This is the Ganga View Restaurant. Ganga is the Sanskrit name for the Ganges. Lakshman Jhula is a town of many ashrams and temples a few miles north of Rishikesh, along the old pilgrimage route to the high Himalayas. It is set in a deep gorge where the Ganges slices a jagged path through the foothills. I decided to walk there and enjoy the pleasant scenery along the riverbank. I left immediately after lunch and set out the same way that Vijay, his friend, and I had taken yesterday. When I came to the Ram Jhula suspension bridge, I found that it was crowded with fellow travelers. The 1,000-foot bridge is barely 6 feet wide and is therefore prone to unique traffic jams. Sometimes, a solitary cow would wander onto the bridge and crouch at the halfway point, sedately watching the throng scramble around her. One day, 2 fruit vendors pushing hand carts piled high with bananas and oranges entered the bridge from opposite ends. When we met at the center, they found that the bridge was not wide enough for their carts to pass. Each demanded that the other should back up. An angry argument ensued while hundreds of pedestrians stuck on either side pushed and shoved, impatient to get across. When I first came to Rishikesh 8 years ago, the Ram Jhula bridge had not yet been built. Travelers had to go all the way to Lakshman Jhula, where a larger suspension bridge spans the Ganges. Travelers could also choose to ride a ferry boat across the river. I recalled an earlier visit when I pushed my way onto a tiny ferry boat crowded with excited pilgrims. They fed sweets to the river's sacred fish and erupted in piercing cries, "Ganga Mata Ki Jai! Hail to Mother Ganges!" Just across the river lies Svargashram, a town of ashrams, temples, and shrines popular with pilgrims. This place also features many brightly painted outdoor exhibits depicting various gods and goddesses. The childlike simplicity of these displays made it feel like a spiritual Disneyland. And like Disneyland, Svargashram attracts families with children. Here, they can combine a fun holiday in the mountains together with a pious religious pilgrimage. The narrow lane running through the vicinity is lined on both sides with tiny shops catering to the vacationer pilgrim's needs. A sort of spiritual bazaar. In addition to the usual provisions, one can find technicolor laser prints of venerated deities, as well as varieties of oil lamps and articles of worship. Tiny brass pots were sold for collecting a few ounces of Ganges water to be taken home, where it would be used for rituals or perhaps as sacred medicine. In these narrow passages, a few cows laid in the cool shade of shops' awnings. One cow licked thirstily at a dripping faucet. I obliged her by opening the tap, thereby earning God's grace according to the beliefs of my fellow Hindu travelers. Instead of hiking eastward into the mountains as I had done yesterday with Vijay, I turned north along a delightfully shaded footpath paralleling the river, winding through a forest which is home to dozens of sadhus living in simple huts. After walking more than a mile on the sandy path, I arrived at Lakshman Jhula. The town named after the suspension bridge here, whose web of steel cables has spanned the river for 80 years. Although Jhula means swing in Hindi, there is no other word in the language for suspension bridge. Lakshman is the brother of Lord Rama, a heroic and divine figure from ancient times, revered as an incarnation of God, and the past life of Krishna. When the new bridge was built downstream at Svargashram, it was named Ram Jhula after Lord Rama, perhaps so the venerated brothers would symbolically dwell together here and shower their blessings on the region. These inseparable brothers are the heroes of the Ramayana, a magnificent epic poem much loved throughout the country. Traditional stories such as the Ramayana are much more than mere entertainment. They pervade Hindu culture, powerfully conveying moral values, love for humanity, and devotional themes. The Ramayana and the equally popular Mahabharata are stories of gargantuan scope and length. The Ramayana recounts Lord Rama's exploits, his banishment into the forest, the kidnapping of his wife Sita by the evil Ravana, and the colossal battle to rescue Sita. The Mahabharata, attributed to the sage Vyasa, is acknowledged as the world's longest poem. It contains about 100,000 two-line verses, each in elegant Sanskrit. It tells the fabulously elaborate story surrounding a terrible war fought between two rival clans and of Lord Krishna's decisive role in that battle. For centuries, children have heard these and other stories sitting on their parents' or grandparents' laps. Even today, they are popular bedtime stories. But they are meant not only for children. The Mahabharata, for example, presents a vast array of fascinating characters engaged in conflicts of incredible complexity. The most widely read scripture in India, the Bhagavad Gita, is actually a 700-verse section excerpted from the middle of the Mahabharata. In the Gita, Lord Krishna gives spiritual instruction to the great warrior Arjuna in the midst of the battlefield. Because stories are capable of conveying subtle and profound messages in a captivating way, they are frequently employed in traditional spiritual teaching. Few gurus could sit before their students to teach without telling several stories to serve as illustrations. And that's a great place to stop. And a good segue into a reminder that on my ASMR YouTube channel we've been reading through said Bhagavad Gita, the excerpt from the greatest poem ever written, the Mahabharata, as it takes us on a journey to understand the nature of consciousness, existence, and bliss, sung 5,000 years ago on the battlefield of Kurukshetra.